What's up, guys? Today we're going to look at a poem. And last quarter we did stories, which take a while, but poems are quick. And so we can do a new one every day, or maybe more than one every day. We're going to try to find some variety. So if you like this, great. I like it too. But if not, we'll see a new one next time and a new one the time after that. Different styles, authors, times, and places. Okay, this poem is called Cut by Sylvia Plath. It was written in 1962. And I don't like to do a lot of biographical background before we start. I want to get into it and then mix in what you might want to know along the way. The setting is pretty simple. You'll see right away this is about someone who was chopping vegetables, accidentally took a chunk off of her thumb, and now it starts. What a thrill. My thumb instead of an onion, the top quite gone except for a sort of hinge of skin, a flap like a hat, dead white. Then that red plush. Little pilgrim, the Indians axed your scalp. Your turkey wattle carpet rolls straight from the heart. I step on it, clutching my bottle of pink fizz. A celebration this is. Out of a gap 1,000,000 soldiers run. Redcoats, every one. Whose side are they on? Oh, my homunculus, I am ill. I have taken a pill to kill the thin, papery feeling. Saboteur, kamikaze man, the stain on your gauze Ku Klux Klan babushka darkens and tarnishes, and when the bald pulp of your heart confronts its small mill of silence, how you jump. Trepin veteran, dirty girl, thumb stump. I told you it was quick. Now we're going to stop and zoom in and point out a few things, okay? There's a lot. When you see a poem, you can look at the rhythm, the rhyme, the form, all kinds of stuff. We're going to focus on one thing each time. So you might notice the lines. We got short and long, and there's a weird mix. That's interesting. We'll talk about it later. You might notice that the stanzas are regular. It's always four, a group of four. That's called a quatrain. We'll talk about stanzas later. You might notice there is quite a bit of rhyme, even though it's not completely regular. You've got fizz, is, run, one, on, ill, pill, kill, jump, stump. And by the way, you might, even in a poem that has no other rhyme, you might end with one. It's just a nice little cherry on top. We'll see that in a bunch of poems this quarter. And you'll see it in other places too, like Shakespeare. When he's giving a speech, it might not rhyme along the way, but they'll usually conclude with one, just to sort of put a bow on it. Now, what I want to talk about is not that other stuff. We'll save that, but I want to talk about the comparisons. Okay, that's our first lesson and our first thing we're going to practice. In middle school, you might have had to memorize the difference between metaphor and simile and, choose that on a test. I'm not going to really worry about the distinction between the two, but the idea is important that when you have a thing, your image, your topic, you're going to compare it to other things. And sometimes they'll be pretty obvious and pretty close, and sometimes they'll be way out there. But we need both, and we need lots of new angles to see things. Otherwise, it's just boring, but you want to make it artful. You want to make us see what you're describing in a way we haven't before. So the way that this poem goes is it kind of starts slow and then it gets crazy at the end. We've got this moment of shock, maybe. If you were to cut your thumb, you don't instantly feel all the pain and see all the blood and think all the thoughts. You look at it and like, oh, look at that. And it's kind of like, adrenaline makes you really focus on visuals. There's less sound, there's less smell, there's less of, you just look at what's right in front of you and you kind of observe it and you think, oh, look at that. And then a second later, the blood comes out. And then a second later, you feel it hurt. And then a second later, you think about all the worries. But it's, one thing at a time. There are often stories about, someone getting shot. And they look and go, oh, look at that blood. And then they go, oh no, I've been shot, and then they fall down, and it's sort of step by step, you know. This is similar to that. We get some basic descriptions, nothing too crazy. Hinge is a little bit of a metaphor because you're describing it like a door or some other mechanical device. And then we've got a hat, which begins something we'll see a lot, which is she describes the thumb as a person, as like, oh, this is a little guy, and the top is the hat or the head or something, which we get right here. Little pilgrim, the Indians axed your scalp. So this is like, I don't know if it's really that bad if you scalp a human and, you know, cut off their cranial skin, then you see the bone underneath. Did she see the bone on her thumb? If so, that's pretty bad. I don't know, but this is meant to put that in our minds at least. And it's also, I don't know if this is really important, but sometimes when people read this, they say, well, you know, Sylvia Plath was an American who married a British guy and was living in England in a place called Devon, which is like, you know, countryside, cottage, beautiful kind of thing. And maybe she was feeling like a foreigner in a strange place. Maybe this is in the poem, how there are a couple different references to American historical things. I don't know, maybe. Speaking of that, the Indian pilgrim motif goes into another North American Thanksgiving thing, your turkey waddle. And that's not literally related, but it's an associative thing. If you've ever done free association, or if you've ever had someone say, hey, what's the first word that comes to your mind when I say blah, 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 then you get the idea that sometimes it's nice to make a leap from one idea to another, even if they're not logically connected. You can do that in poems. You can do that in dreams or whatever. Your turkey waddle. Waddle is the red thing under the neck of a turkey, and it's kind of ugly, you know. It's not smooth. It's kind of this blobby, wrinkly thing. Maybe the blood coming out of her thumb is sort of disgusting her at the moment. Earlier we've got the word plush, which is kind of nice. It's kind of, you know, round and soft, but then this turkey waddle makes me go, ugh, I don't know. And it comes straight from the heart, which is true, literally. You've got the blood pumping from her heart to the thumb, but also, now that we've said the word heart, it brings in ideas of emotion, and we're not in this neutral mode anymore. She's thinking about the pain and the sort of anxiety related angles on it. Okay. Clutching my bottle of pink fizz. Is that grabbing the thumb again? Is that something else? It's a little unclear at that part. But this one is really clear. Out of a gap, a million soldiers run. Redcoats, every one. So we got all the blood cells, and she's describing them as redcoats. Again, the little American history thing. You know, her husband is British. Is she thinking of like there's some kind of conflict there? There was some kind of conflict there in real life. And is there any angle of like, you know, threat? I don't know. But certainly they are literally red, the cells that are coming out of your skin when you chop it off. So it fits on that side. And this, whose side are they on, introduces this idea we're going to see later, which is like, hey, what's, you know, who's the bad guy here? I cut myself. Did I do it on purpose? Am I, you know, self-sabotaging here? Or are my blood cells hurting me? I thought they're supposed to help me. What's the deal? And, oh, my homunculus, I am ill. I have taken a pill to kill the thin, papery feeling. Homunculus is a great word. It might be a philosophical term for, like, sort of, you know, the observer who's, like, piloting the ship of your body. Are you your body, or are you this, you know, soul separately? There's been this debate for hundreds of years. Or homunculus is also used to describe a psychological thing. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but there's a picture of like this guy with big hands and a big mouth, and it's meant to represent the sensitivity of each area of the body, or like what has the most nerve endings. So the hands are big because hands are very sensitive. You can feel things on your fingertips, or you can feel things on your mouth very delicately, but on your forehead not much, or your shoulder not much. So certainly chopping your thumb is a lot more painful than getting hit in the knee or something. So maybe that's the idea as well. Now we get into this idea that I mentioned earlier, which is like, whose side are they on? Saboteur is someone who does sabotage, is someone who throws a wrench in the works and breaks the machinery. Now it's usually used in war, someone sabotaging a vehicle or a bridge or something, but originally comes from the French sabot, which is a shoe. The story, and I don't know if this is real, but the story is these guys who are put out of work by automation, being replaced by machines, and the Industrial Revolution would throw shoes into these machines and break it. I don't know if that's true, but it's certainly a good story. Kamikaze, again, is a suicide bomber. This is only 20 years after World War II, so this is still fresh in everybody's minds, but there's this idea in the poem about like, oh, did I hurt myself? Am I doing this in some kind of self-destructive way? And if she was certainly suicidal in real life at the time. Now, then, as I said earlier, it kind of starts slow, but then it just gets crazy. And in the next few stanzas, we have new comparisons every second, sometimes more than one per line, and we're jumping all around. The stain on your gauze, okay, that's fine, that's normal. That's like, oh, I put gauze on my thumb, and it literally is stained because of the blood. But then Ku Klux Klan, okay, we're wrapping white sheets around this little guy, our thumb here. Babushka is an old Russian grandma with a little scarf around her head, usually a red scarf, and so we're jumping all over from like this really horrible, violent, threatening thing to this like old grandma, and we don't really know what the deal is. Are we scared? Are we joking? What's the meaning? It's hard to say, but we certainly mentioned lots of killers and horrible things, in addition to just like, oh, hey, this looks like this other thing. So the cut is not neutral by the end. By the beginning, it's like, oh, look at that, it's a weird shape, and we're going to talk about the colors. And by the end, it's like, full of emotion and violence and all kinds of connotation that wasn't there at the beginning. And I want to go to the last little bit here. Trepanned veteran. Trepanation or trepanning was a procedure that was done in the past. I guess it still is every once in a while, to people who had pressure in their skull, like swelling in the brain. Now you can usually just take antibiotics and get that down. But if you had, 100 years ago or 200 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, what they would do is crack your skull or drill a hole in your skull to relieve the pressure. And apparently it worked, because you can find skulls of people who healed over, meaning they lived for many years afterwards. But it continues this metaphor of like, okay, the thumb is a little guy and the top is the head, and the head has been damaged, and it's a veteran, so he's been through this war just like the redcoats earlier. So full of violence and threat and all kinds of things. Very, in my opinion, interesting, stylish poem. I don't know if you have a taste for it, but that's okay. My assignment for you guys is to pick a topic, some kind of image with a physical visual to it. Maybe it's something in your room, or maybe it's something you see out your window, a beautiful flower, or your cat's messed up tail, or who knows what. And describe it by comparing it to other things. Okay? So that means maybe it shares one thing in common, but the rest is different. So you might compare it to something that's the same color, but a different size, shape, time, place, whatever, or the same motion, but different everything else, or the same sound, but different everything else. And so you'll bring in all these associations, and you can use them to set the mood and all kinds of things. I'd recommend starting off, you got to go with color. Color is so meaningful. Like if you just say red, then we instantly think of blood and passion and fire and all that good stuff, even if you're just talking about a tomato, you know. Or if you say blue, we think of the ocean and the depths and the subconscious, even if you're just talking about a piece of candy. Okay? So that's what I would recommend, is you start with something that you compare due to color, but it doesn't have to be, and you can use all kinds of association. It doesn't have to be logically connected, but that's what we're here for, and that's when it gets fun. Okay, this does not have to be a poem with a title and everything. You can do bullet points. This is just to get us started on our journey. Thanks.